The United States military is broken, and it's because of them. The Joint Chiefs of Staff and many other generals and admirals, they are weak and frightened men and very, very ambitious, and they'll do whatever it takes to, well, keep the promotions coming and get those big jobs in the defense industry once their time is up. It's a recipe for disaster, a long time in the making. These guys did not become generals because they're good leaders. They got it because they knew how to kiss the right you-know-what. All right, now being in the military is tough, right? I mean, we all saw the boot camp stuff, and those junior enlisted people and officers who take the oath, and wow, they're amazing. But they are not being adequately led. No way. You know it and I know it. The military has become a woke joke. And some of these guys, they're traitorous. They're mutinous. And I'm going to show you how. Remember General Milley and the conniption he had when President Trump went to the church and held up the Bible after that horrible, horrible night of violence, right? Remember that? And law and order was established. Somehow holding a Bible in front of a church was the worst thing that ever happened. Now, the media, you may remember, totally lost its mind about this.
The President of the United States looking like a wannabe dictator, right. So he could walk over to a church and pretend to be concerned about the church.
Outrage is growing over the forceful removal of peaceful protesters to clear the way for the president to hold a photo op at St. John's Church.
We saw peaceful protesters being gassed so the president could take a stroll and so he could pose for the cameras.
Donald Trump started a riot in the President's Park in Lafayette Park so he could have a photo op and awkwardly, weirdly, bizarrely hold a Bible like nobody has ever held a Bible before.
This is when I realized the country really is in serious, serious trouble. Holding a Bible in front of a church, the nation's leader, somehow this is a perverse image. No, those who have a problem with it, they're the perverse ones. And General Milley, I expect that, quite frankly, from the media. Anything that Barack Obama did the same thing, it would have been totally beautiful. But General Milley, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and he was there that day. More on where he was in a moment. But this, almost my only grievance with President Trump. After this happened, this man needed to be fired immediately.
As many of you saw the result of the photograph of me at Lafayette Square last week, that sparked a national debate about the role of the military in civil society. I should not have been there. My presence in that moment and in that environment created a perception of the military involved in domestic politics.
My God, he's apologizing for being with the commander-in-chief. Who was he actually apologizing to? This was a signal to the swamp. I'm with you. I'm with the deep state. I'm not with the elected leader of this country. Now, what was the big thing he was apologizing for? Again, being with President Trump. Oh, by the way, yeah, he wasn't actually in the photo op. Keep this in mind. Where is General Milley? There is no General Milley. 10 minutes earlier, he was momentarily spotted. You see him all the way behind President Trump? And he takes to the microphone to apologize for it. Folks, this, I do believe, is part of a potential military coup. You saw the apology. You see where he is. This is insane stuff. And then he said something about, oh, we can't be seen as being involved in domestic affairs. The military must be apart from that, which is true. But watch what he says next. He dives into every hot-button political domestic issue of our time.
I am outraged by the senseless and brutal killing of George Floyd. What we are seeing is the long shadow of our original sin in Jamestown 401 years ago. We are still struggling with racism, and we have much work to do. Unspoken and unconscious bias have no place in America, and they have no place in our armed forces. And we should all be proud that the vast majority of protests have been peaceful. We must ensure fairness and equity at all key gateway selection boards, including promotion, command, and war call. Be inclusive. Make a commitment to seek out and surround yourself with those who don't look like you.
Hey, everybody. I'm woke as anything, and I don't like Donald Trump. That was the message. Look at the nonsense he's talking about, the original sin of slavery. Unconscious bias. That's junk science, okay? It totally is. And even if it does exist, which we don't know if it does, what can anybody do about it? Equity, these are leftist talking points. This is part of the reason why we lost in Afghanistan, okay? Guys like this running the military, not really concerned about the troops, but trying to figure out how to enhance their power, their status, their prestige in the swamp. That's what you just saw. How about that China balloon, right? The damn thing sailed all the way across the country. And, well, we didn't do anything about it until it was safely over water. Safely over water. Well, it was safely over the Great Plains, wasn't it? Plenty of times to shoot it down. Now, actually, this is one of the rare moments where I actually think Joe Biden is kind of telling the truth. Kind of. I'll explain, but take a look.
When one of these high-altitude surveillance balloons entered our airspace over the continental United States earlier in the month, I gave the order to shoot it down as soon as it would be safe to do so. The military advised against shooting it down over land because of the sheer size of it.
Military. He's kind of blaming the military, but I actually believe the military may have made that recommendation. Why? Because the Joint Chiefs of Staff, they know what the boss wants to hear, all right? They've become experts at it. They've been doing it all their lives. The boss doesn't want to shoot down the China balloon until it's over water. The boss doesn't want to mess with the China balloon until it's done its business. The boss likes China. We all know it. We all know it. So that's the way the game is played. And now they're playing it in a way that will ruin our military and destroy our national security. You may think this is not a big deal. Trust me, it is. Having served for 9 years on active duty, what you're about to see is a total and complete disgrace.
I was able to deploy on the USS Gerald R. Ford last fall, and the coolest thing I did on board was to be able to participate in a LGBTQ spoken word night, and I was able to read a poem that I wrote to the whole ship, and that was probably the culmination of the whole deployment.
Our culture is gone. Did you catch that? On the USS Gerald Ford, which was one of our newest and best aircraft carriers, great technology, although the catapult system is a little messed up, they had, what happens at night? What happens to that ship at night? It's LGBTQ spoken word night on the USS Gerald Ford. LGBTQ. WTF? What the fudge? This is insanity, all right? I spent a lot of time on ships myself. Occasionally we had movie night, but that was pretty much it. No gay poetry reading. In fact, there was no straight poetry reading either. It was just the mission. Is that so foreign? To today's military, it is. This insanity that you just saw, that you just witnessed, it's been endorsed by the highest ranks of the Pentagon. This isn't some rogue ship with some woke skipper. This is the military.
I have a lot of problems with this video. This non-binary officer said the highlight of a deployment on the USS Gerald Ford was reading a poem to the entire ship. Admiral Gilday, have you seen this video?
I have.
I hope we train our officers to prioritize their sailors, not themselves. Did it surprise you that a junior officer says the highlight of her deployment, her first and the ship's first, was about herself and her own achievement?
I'll tell you why I'm particularly proud of this sailor.
Yeah, I'm going to stop him right there. He's particularly proud of the sailor and the gay poem and LGBTQ night. He doesn't apologize. He doesn't promise to fire the captain of the ship, who should be fired. He should resign. The Secretary of Defense. In a sane world, that would be happening right now. But this person knows where the swamp is right now. He's a political character. That's how he got to be an admiral in the first place. He knows which way the wind is blowing, and he's going in that direction. God bless Tommy Tuberville, though, right? The senator from Alabama, who was a great football leader. He's a great leader, period.
The problem that I'm having is the obsession with race, gender, sex. It's focused on self. It's not focused on team. And if we don't start building team, we have no chance to win individually in this country. We have no chance.
He's great. He's totally great. And you know what I really like? For a long time, the military counted on civilians, especially politicians, to not mess with them, to not question them because you never served in uniform. And they got the idea that somehow the civilians worked for them. It doesn't work that way. The military is subordinate to political leadership. Good for Tommy Tuberville, and God help the military.
What's your drink of choice?
A Negroni.
I was going to say the same thing.
Magliato. With Prosecco. Magliato. With Prosecco. A Negroni. With Prosecco.
So maybe you've seen this by now. It is one of those influencers who's active duty Navy, a digital ambassador for the Navy. This will somehow increase recruitment. You know, I still am kind of praying that this is an elaborate prank that we've all fallen for, but apparently it's not. This is the real deal. This is actually happening. And it's heartbreaking because our country cannot survive if our military is so indulged. Now, who remembers Colin Powell? He was a little bit wishy-washy in later years, but he was a hell of a general. Actually, I do have to get this out of the way. He became a professional Republican who votes for Democrats. Remember this phase of his career?
Will you endorse President Obama this race?
Well, you know, I voted for him in 2008, and I plan to stick with him in 2012, and I'll be voting for he and for Vice President Joe Biden next month.
Powell announced he will vote for Clinton, reportedly saying she is balanced, she has temperament, and no matter what anyone says, she has stamina.
I support Joe Biden for the presidency of the United States because those values still define him, and we need to restore those values to the White House.
Oh boy, the late Secretary Powell really went off the deep end there in the end. But before all that, decades ago, he was one effective soldier. And when it came to matters of sexuality in the military, I thought he had the best approach. This is the guy who came up with the don't ask, don't tell compromise with the Clinton administration. And here he is describing what it is, what life is like in the military. Here we go.
We are the best force in the world, and to be the best requires subjugating individual rights to the benefit of the group and the benefit of the team. Homosexuals over history who have been willing to keep their orientation private have been successful members of those teams. Congress and the courts have consistently upheld the unique circumstances of military service, and I believe the American people understand these unique circumstances and support them as well.
Absolutely. There are certain things you have to give up when you're in the military. We all understood that, those of us who joined. Yet, 1993, 30 years ago, and today. Yeah, all right, yeah, that's enough again. Wow, right? Colin Powell had it right. And actually, this is an important point as well.
In the military, we discriminate in many ways that would be absolutely unthinkable and unacceptable in civilian life. We have rules and regulations that are unique to our calling and could not pass any constitutional test if they were applied in civilian life.
Yeah, well, we've all loosened up quite a bit. It's not 1993 anymore. It's 2023, and you can be fabulous, as fabulous. Remember when we used to say in the Army, be all you can be? Do you think they meant this, okay? You know, the only thing more outrageous than this is this. The kids. Yeah, that's happening too. So I met with President Trump last week. He called it the transgender mess. He didn't say drag. He didn't say non-binary. He called it a mess, the transgender mess. And it is. All right, back to the military situation. And actually regarding President Trump, these guys were out to undermine him every step of the way. Not only them, but officers, unfortunately, throughout the military. I do believe, because they were getting their orders from the swamp, from the deep state. I have to show you something from January 20th of 2017, this amazing inaugural address. First of all, it's a great quote, and it really put them in a bad light with the swamp. They hated this. We loved it. They hated it. Something very strange happens in the middle of this moment. Take a look.
For too long, a small group in our nation's capital has reaped the rewards of government while the people have borne the cost. Washington flourished, but the people did not share in its wealth. Politicians prospered, but the jobs left and the factories closed.
Did you see that? The soldiers, Marines, turned their back on him and walked away mid-speech. Number one, a terrible distraction. Number two, a huge sign of disrespect. Absolutely something very sinister going on there. Folks, I hope Donald Trump gets back into power. I do. I'm clear about that. I support him. I like him. I like the policies. I like the style. And he's going to have to clean house, okay? That is going to be a monumental task. And on this National Day of Prayer, did you know it's a National Day of Prayer? I think we should pray for him and maybe even Enrique Tarrio, who, in my opinion, was just unjustly convicted of the worst possible thing. I'll be right back.